Good morning, everyone. Morning. Thank you for coming to my talk with all the options out there, so I appreciate that. My name is Chris O'Dell, and I'm a software engineer, and I want to try and, not convince, but ask you to think about taking some of the on-call support of your own applications. So, who here has actually done some on-call? Oh, excellent, like it. So, was it, keep your hand up if it was awesome. Yeah, okay, right, so I've got my talk is kind of split up into a couple of chunks, okay? So the first chunk is where I explain my rationale, and then I talk about some ways of making it easier, and then how to actually manage it without causing some burnout on people. So that's how I'm hoping to make your hands be a little more, it's actually not so bad. Okay, so a bit about me. I'm a back-end engineer at Monzo. I've been there 3 weeks now, so I don't know if you know who Monzo are, but they make these hot coral banking cards, so they're a challenger bank. And yeah, before that, I was on some startups where we were kind of unofficial second line, where pretty much everyone's on call, because, everyone is. And also at Just Eat, where everyone is on call at Just Eat. We have a whole rotation system, and you own your own apps and everything. So I'm speaking from a point of experience, is all I'm trying to say there. I've got a couple of books. I'm going to plug them. So this one's a free, so CD with Windows and .NET, so you can see that I've done some stuff about CD. Okay. So this subject is huge. This topic is absolutely massive. There are whole conferences devoted to monitoring, observability, logging, being on call, supporting apps. I mean, VelocityConf, I'd say DevOps Days. So in this 45-minute talk, I'm just going to kind of inundate you with links, stuff, find more about it. So that's all it's like. It's the tip of the iceberg. Hopefully you can go away and be enthused about this subject matter. So I'll start from getting everyone on the same page. So there's a lot of stuff here you probably already know. So I'll start by describing the CD pipeline. Okay. In most places, it will look something similar to this. You'll start with some kind of analysis phase, and you'll drop into a kind of TDD cycle, red-green refactor, until that's happy. You'll commit that, and you'll probably run some automated unit tests, whatever kind of tests. And if they fail, it comes back, and you fix it. When those pass, you'll probably deploy it somewhere, run some acceptance tests, some kind of whatever. Basically, you go through all these phases, and you react on this feedback on it, and then you review it and deploy it to production. Something similar like that. Does anyone see any missing feedback loops? I like interaction. You can shout. It's okay. No, okay. I see one here. So when we actually do the deployment process, we never actually kind of get the feedback on how successful that process was and feed that back into the development of the application. I also see another one that's missing. And that's once you've deployed it to production. What happens then? We need to then track the feedback from that and feed it into your application. But in most places, there is a wall. Okay? In most places, that responsibility is separated. It's separated between dev and ops. So on one side, you've got the devs who are incentivized to keep pushing changes out. And on the other side, you've got the ops who are kind of incentivized to keep it stable. This is not news to everyone here. I mean, DevOps, whatever. It's about breaking down this wall. But these feedback loops at the bottom disappear in this environment. You never get the information, or it's hard to get the information back from how it's running an application in production, how the deployment process went, back to the people who are developing the application. It's not so simple. Oh, interesting. So you end up kind of at these loggerheads, okay? So there's an impasse. How do we solve it? There are ways of tackling this, and the ways that most people will start with is with monitoring, logging, telemetry, graphics, graphs. But it's not really first-hand feedback. My problem with the graphs and stuff like this is you have to know in advance what you want to put in them so that you can start monitoring them to get them out again. So there's kind of a really long feedback loop on this one. So something has to go wrong first before you can put it in there. So I want to talk a bit about telemetry. So Sam Newman wrote the book on microservices, literally. He talks about aggregated logging and stuff like that. Most people who've got systems will probably have aggregated logging. You'll have an elk stack. And this can help put a hole in that wall. This is a really good place to start. So I suggest that putting something in, even if you don't have the systems right now, something that's on the cloud, maybe like log entries or paper trail, just get something in there to start getting that feedback. Grafana, graphs, just start overloading yourself with them. And what you get is metrics-driven development after that. So metrics-driven development is the use of real-time metrics to drive rapid, precise, and granular software iterations. So real-time is in everyone can see the metrics there and then. Rapid, obviously, so that you can combine what your changes are doing and see if they actually have an effect. Precise, very small changes, and granular. And I think metrics-driven development is where you take that telemetry and you do something with it, you react to it. But there's a gap still. There's still a mental gap. There's still a mental model that you have created about how your application works, about how your system works, but it may not be the way it really is. So there's a talk here by Coda Hale, Metrics Everywhere, which I think is fantastic, where he talks about that gap, how you assume a system works, like when this thing fails, it'll bring down those 5 things or whatever. And you code your monitoring and your logging systems to give you that information. So you're starting from a point where you haven't quite got everything to begin with. So I say that Developers on Call is an evolution of the metrics development, which is itself an evolution of CD. So I think this is just the way it's going. I think this is, you keep expanding the amount of information and feedback you're getting till you shrink the gap between the mental model of how you think it works and how it really works. So I also believe that at a point, software and performance bugs become more common than infrastructure ones, especially as we move to the cloud with serverless and whatever. You'll have less monitoring and need for looking after, say, servers and CPUs and all this kind of stuff. You can automate it away. So where we actually need support is not what we traditionally had in the kind of systems world, but more in the application world. This is where we're going to start needing help. When things are broken, we want people with the best context trying to fix those things. That's Blake Scrivener, who's the Netflix SRE manager. And there's this fantastic article here, Who Owns On Call, where they've gone and asked a bunch of different companies like Netflix and I can't remember who the other ones are. I think maybe Etsy or whatever. Oh, Spotify. And they've got how those companies manage On Call. And most of them are doing some version of devs on call, because as it says there, as Blake himself says, the people who know the app are the best people to fix it. So, but this separation about having ops people and dev people the other side of the wall continues to create that gap. They're blind from this information. So having a separate operations team creates a divide and simply doesn't scale. It puts the onus of responsibility of fixing an issue on the wrong team. And that's Joey Parsons' Airbnb SRE manager from the same article. So again, these people are saying from their own experience that unless you've got those people who've got the knowledge of the app working there to fix any issues, it's just creating it more pain, making it take longer to resolve. So I'm trying to advocate that you own your product for its entire lifetime. So from the moment you start writing code to the day it's deleted. That's what I would like to see. So I see that ownership is a prerequisite of the autonomy, mastery, purpose. You've probably heard that 100 times this couple of days, okay? So I'm just adding on to that. Dan Pink's stuff is really, really good on this kind of thing. So if you want to get the best out of the application you're creating or the best out of yourselves, you need to start having something you own that you can look after or get better at with a purpose of it. But with great power comes great responsibility. So if you have all this power to look after your own apps, you own it from start to finish, you have to be aware and you have to take the responsibility of your changes. What I mean by that is become experts in supporting the system that you've got right now. So what I've seen in places is that Teams will be told, right, great, you now own this app that you've been working on. And yes, we know you hate it. Yes, we know it's horrible. And now that you own it, you have license to improve it, to fix it. It's yours. Don't jump in at the deep end. Don't just rewrite it. What I'm suggesting is understand and become experts in your system that you've got right now so that you can take that knowledge and use it to make it better in the future. Ask yourselves if you would really trust a new system that you rewrite because you have the power to kind of not wake you up at night. Operating in production is an often neglected use case of a product. I think this is very key. When we write a whole bunch of user stories, a whole bunch of things you want your app to do, you want it to be secure, you want it to satisfy the customer's needs, well, there's another customer, the people making sure it runs. And we forget that whole angle. So start maybe writing some user stories where the user is you. I would like logging that has trace level, that I can turn up or off or on at the click of a button. I want to be able to have the system react to a small network blip. Just write yourself some use cases and get them on the backlog. And again, ownership is being on call for your own product. Being on call for your own product is more about risk management than control. Yeah. So now that you have so you need to consider, kind of like with a mature way, that every decision you make from now on, now that you own the app, is basically just risk management. You can decide whether something you're going to do is worth it, worth that risk. And there's another talk on later about risk, so I think it's a good idea to go to that one. So I'm going to change now. Hopefully I've given you an idea of why I think it's a good idea to have developers on support as well as existing teams. So I want to now give some advice about being on call. So on-call engineers are the first aiders of software engineering. So like with first aid, right? So they're there, you just kind of get the system breathing again. They're not the doctors, they're not the surgery on the side of the road, you just get the system breathing again. So I've done first aid training, and you've got a kind of mnemonic there, and when you get to a situation, you have airways, breathing, and circulation. So if you see someone who's in trouble, you kind of remember this mnemonic, and you help them. You make sure that everything's kind of breathing, and then you kind of wait for the ambulance, and they figure out the rest. So I decided to see if I could make a similar mnemonic for being on call. So the ABCs of being on call. I have A for assess. So triage any kind of incoming alerts, find out which one's the most important, where the source of the problem is. Find out blast radius, B for that. Figure out how much of an impact this particular alert issue is. What's going to be going down? How far out is this blast from this? And C, compensate. Apply some kind of compensating mitigation actions to mitigate the problem, to get the system breathing again. So, will that work? Just thought I'd give it a go. The ABC. So, mitigating actions. What kind of things are there that we could provide? What compensating actions can we provide? So, some examples here. Turn off a feature flag. If something new has just gone out, maybe that's the problem. Turn that off. Apply some kind of graceful degradation where if, say, the more heavy parts of the site are causing you problem, bring it down so that you can only, say, do much more easy flow. In Just Eat, we would turn off card payment if we had problems with card processors. At least we could still take some orders in cash, for instance. Turn on load shedding, redeploy a known good version. There are absolutely tons of things you can do. And Ines Sombra has a fantastic talk here called Architectural Patterns of Resilient Distributed Systems, where she talks about these things and many more patterns like this of how you can have your system almost self-healing. She references papers, and it's a fantastic good talk I would recommend to anybody where she talks about how you can get your system to be resilient to many of these issues. But as you can probably guess, you probably don't have these in your system already. They need to be coded in. And this is where I go back to my earlier slides and say that these are use cases for your app that you need to consider when you are building it. You need to build these in so that you yourselves can have a system which is resilient. But yeah, like with the doctors and the ambulance and the paramedics, do not investigate the root cause of an incident whilst it's happening. You are just there to get it breathing, and then you wait for the wait for the paramedics, or you deal with it in the morning when there's time and pressure's off. So you do a follow-up the next day, once you've got it breathing again. Run some kind of blameless post-mortem, which is some kind of discussion to figure out kind of how the event happened. Not finding out like who or what, because people are part of a system as well. So there's usually multiple reasons for how something can end up being the way it is. But then try and create the mitigating fixes for this, whatever it was, and get them on the backlog and try and get them fixed. I also recommend running a show and tell after any major incidents, or even small incidents. When I was at Just Eat, there was one team that did a show and tell where an outage was caused because there was a certain situation between reactive extensions and the load balancer, and in a certain place they would get to the point where they'd end up DDoSing themselves. So they did a show and tell, and all the other teams realized that they were affected by the same bug, but it hadn't hit them yet. They hadn't hit that certain situation, so they knew to fix it before it even occurred. So I think knowledge sharing internally is also a key part. Mean time to recovery is more important than the mean time between failure for most types of failure. So what John Allspaw means there is that being able to get the system breathing again is the thing you need to code for. That's the thing you've got to focus on. Not making sure your system doesn't go down, like make it rock solid. You need to be able to get it to be able to be kind of like earthquake proof. It needs to be able to come back up. So John Allspaw worked at Etsy. He was the author of Web Operations. It's quite an old book now, 2010, I think. But very good read about how to do resilient web systems. Ownership of runtime success belongs to the team. So if you're the team that owns this app, you also own, as one of the key results that you have to deal with, is the ability of your app's success. So what I mean is production failures go back to you. There's no maintenance team in this world. Because again, that feedback loop would not come back to you, it would come back to someone else, and that's useless. That's an extra hop. And I don't want to say that this is the end of ops, because oh no, they've got years and years of like amazing experience. And I think that we could learn a lot from them rather than just going gung-ho into, yeah, I'm on call. So I would say collaborate with them. Understand from them how the systems work, how to handle things in production. Try to improve your knowledge of highly available systems. Learn about the logging, the metrics, toolings, the stuff they've got there. Pair with them for a bit. And learn from others. I love this current trend that's happening right now, where companies are very open about their own failures, their own outages. There are, I've got a couple here, actually. So GitLab, everyone remember this one, where they managed to delete their production database? Woo! What I really love about it is that they in this blog post here, they explain everything. They even include their chat logs of how they found out on Slack what they'd done, and they were really, really open about it. And all the things that they're going to do next to make sure it doesn't happen again. Like they're going to ensure that the database names are quite different, because I think that's what happened, is it was like one character different or something like that. So we ended up thinking it was deleting staging, it was deleting prod. And this is the things that you can, without us having to make the same mistake, we can learn from it. Amazon's S3. S3 doesn't go down, right? Well, they discovered the hard way that despite having 3 main key controllers, that if they lose one of them, it actually takes the whole lot down. So they lost one in an upgrade. And here again, in this blog post, they put down everything that they went through to make it happen, how they resolved it, and what they're going to do next. Again, it's just really excellent learning. And Monzo, we did too. We had an outage for 2 hours because of a slight inconsistency between 2 different versions of etcd and, was it etcd? No, it was Linkerd and Kubernetes. Tiny, tiny difference. It was something like the way it handled nulls. But they didn't find it out. They took them 2 hours of outage before they could find out how to fix this thing. So again, he has an amazing, our CTO, one of our head of engineering, has an amazing blog post where he goes into exact detail of how this happened and what they're going to do about it. And it was he's also got a video of it too. So I love this. If you have any of your own issues, please blog this stuff, share this stuff, obviously with your company's permission. But I think we should, yeah, I'm excited anyway. The key point of all that is never fail the same way twice. And if we don't have to fail ourselves, then we can learn from others. But yeah, do what you can so you never see the same errors over and over again. Okay. Promote a sense of safety for when you're on call. What I mean by that is that going fast, like racing cars and stuff, they can only do that because they have safety barriers. So what I want to say is offer similar kind of ways of safety for any on-call engineers as well. So yeah, create a culture where on-call is normal and respected, and provide support for improvement and allow for failure. Alerting. So yeah, it's kind of changed tack now to some kind of like ways of actually making it easier on people. So yeah, push alerts. I've been in places, startups in particular, where there was no alerting system. There was basically a spreadsheet with everyone's mobile numbers on it, and if anything was wrong, like which even a customer could find first, is you'd go down that spreadsheet until someone answered their phone. I mean, that was horrible for everybody. So yeah, don't expect engineers to sit and watch logs. Get some kind of alerting. I mean, they're amazing out there. They're out there. AWS, I think, comes with it inbuilt now. And use some kind of tool like PagerDuty, OpsGenie, or similar, which allows you to rotor and schedule, so that there is no kind of down a list until someone answers their phone kind of thing. And supply hardware for people. Supply them with their laptops, phones, whatever they need to do the job. I didn't know this, but you can do stereograms with text. So that's actually a 3D image. You can try and look at it right now, but the slides are online. Don't worry, I'm like teasing you. But basically, this is all about signal to noise, okay? Alerts should only be used when we are comfortable waking someone up. It's very easy to get into a situation where you just ignore them, Oh, it's that 10 o'clock report again. Just, and because that way breeds kind of, complacency. And that's when errors occur. And your alerts need to be informative and actionable. And what I mean by that is if you can include something in the alert message itself that says, something to do, we're having problems with the payment provider, whatever, consider turning off payments. It's something that the person who's sleepy and bleary-eyed knows what they can do immediately. The way to treat alerts is almost like a call-out for the fire brigade, right? If the fire brigade have to answer every alert, then maybe we should too, at which point we need to get cleverer about which alerts we actually acknowledge. Actively combat alert fatigue. That's the thing I mentioned before. When you get so many alerts, you can't tell which ones are worth looking at. So you need to review them constantly because your system will change, your system will grow. Where its current points are will always move. Running an on-call rota. So I've got some tips here, which gets a bit listicle now, of actual kind of actionable tips for if you're running a rota. So, no more than 1 week on time. I've heard of places where people put some on call once a day. People switch once a day. But for me, that's I can't plan, for me personally. I like the idea of being on call for a week at a time because I can plan. As in, I can't take a class that week because I've got this, or I can't, you need to pick up the kids or whatever. So I like no more than 1 week at a time so people can plan. Changeover on a Tuesday. Seems a bit strange, right? But in the UK, we have a lot of bank holidays. And sometimes you need to have a little conversation with who you're changing over to, with who else is taking on call from you. So make it easy. Don't make it like a phone call on a Sunday morning or a bank holiday. Do it when everyone's in the office. Do it when everyone's expecting to be around. Pick something like a Tuesday. These are all literally lifted from this excellent blog post, by the way, from 2010, from a sysops guy. They're all fantastic. So this is where, again, learning from the ops people, they know this stuff. And have an onboarding process for new engineers. Don't just dump them in. You know how sometimes companies will put someone on support, because it's the quickest way to learn. No, that's not fair. That's not nice. At least on this case, those tools like PagerDuty, OpsGenie, whatever, allow you to put more than one person in a schedule. So put 2 people on call for a bit, the newbie and the expert, and tackle issues at the same time, wake you both up, both get on the computer and figure out how to deal with something when it happens, so that you can learn. Don't throw them in the deep end. Agree a reasonable SLA for alert acknowledgement. Now, a lot of problems happen when people don't know the expectations of each other. So what I mean by that is, like, agree some kind of expected acknowledgement time. Be it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I expect you to pick up this alert within 10 minutes. Then everybody knows what they need to do, how far away they can be from a laptop, or what, and if it happens to be people need you to respond faster than 5 or 10 minutes, that's not on call, that's shift work. So do that different. Actually employ people to work those hours. Have escalation policies in place to provide support. Things happen. People can't always pick up their pager. People can't always pick up the alert. So have an understood escalation policy so there's always support. Those tires to help the people out. So someone else knows that potentially if the alert isn't answered in, say, 10, 15, 20 minutes, someone else will get it. And agree some responsibilities. I know that you guys, in my world, we've decided that you own this particular app, and you are responsible for the app, but how far down in the stack is that? Figure out what it is. Figure out what's your team. Figure out what is, say, someone managing the infrastructure. Figure out who's responsible for the monitoring stack, where the lines are, again, to prevent confusion in an issue. Have those discussions up front. Now, this is a bit, I want to give some advice here, some tips on how to make it a little bit less painful to be on call, ways to prevent burnout. Burnout is killing us. That's from John Willis, one of the co-authors of the DevOps Handbook. He has a post here where he describes that a friend of his who took on too much on-call support, too much responsibility, took it all on his own, and without asking for help, he did actually commit suicide. So ever since then, John Willis has been out there advocating for ensuring we don't burn our people out. So I've got some tips really about that, really. You have to be mindful of the cognitive alert of being on call. People don't rest. I'm sure those of you who will let your hand up, you don't rest because you know that there's always potentially something is going to call you up. So be aware that don't put people on call forever and ever and ever. Don't have that spreadsheet with numbers that you go down, because there's no definition of when you're on call or off call, where you can rest or you can't rest. Ensure the team size is big enough to allow for rest, sickness, and holidays. I recently discovered that airline pilots don't have to give a reason if they decide to call in and say, I can't fly today. They just say it, and the airline company's like, okay, cool, we'll get the standby person in. The risk is too high. So maybe we should treat a similar situation for us. If we feel like we can't take if someone says they can't take it, like for some reason, then help each other out. Allow engineers to cover and swap between themselves. Don't manage a rota with tight grip or anything. Allow people to swap hours here or there. I've got to go and have a class or whatever. Can you take 2 hours here? I've got to leave early or whatever. So again, that helps reduce the stress a bit. Ensure that the engineers are empowered and supported to improve the application so that they can then improve that on-call experience. This is tough if you're the engineers here. You need company support. But if anyone is going to be taking it seriously, like your company really wants you guys to be on support, then you need to have the power to make your own experience better. Reduce flapping alerts. Fix things that have been bothering you, waking you up. And I also believe in compensation over reward. So I don't really have a good answer for this, which is why the carrot is so sad. But so money only goes so far. Time in lieu only goes so far. Like, what use is more and more money if you can't spend time with your family? What use is more and more time off lieu if you can only take it on a Tuesday when everyone else is at school or at work? Even with the most money or the most kind of other benefits, you're always trading on goodwill, because if people aren't happy, they will just leave. So I don't have a really good answer on this. I was going to see if there was anything I could get from other industries, like in healthcare, But I've been reliably told that's even worse. So my research hasn't gone very far on this. Just, I guess, to treat it with respect. I guess treat people with respect. Don't continue to give them, try and assume that if you up the compensation even more, it will actually get you more out of them. The carrot will always continue to be sad. So, I believe that devs on call is fast becoming an industry standard. I mean, with all the information that I've been out there and all the stuff that's out there as well, all of these companies are bringing their engineers into their on-call area. I do believe that, at least in the world of web, that everyone before long, there will be on-call rotations for this. And I'd like everyone to kind of take pride in the services that they build. And that's what I think this is. It's about taking pride in the services you build without destroying your team. I would like to see everyone build it. If you build it, you run it. And that's it, really. That's it. Thank you. So, any questions? Because I've got 15 minutes, and I always get loads of questions, so I build in space for it. No? How do you continue to support a system when the only engineer is leaving? Is that what I... Yes? Yes? Yeah. It's a bit of a pickle you got yourselves into by only having one engineer. So that goes back to the slides where I'm saying don't have enough support, have enough people around. I think now you're a little bit, you're in a pickle. You need more people. There is no good answer to that one. Just get some people on board, suck as much knowledge out of his head, and yeah. Try not to be in that situation ever again. Not good advice, I'm afraid. You are such a small team, but if you are also on, maybe you need to be a bit bigger for certain situations like this. I mean, it's the bus factor, that one. You've always had it. When they were on holiday, for instance, you have always had this problem, so you need to grow. Any other questions? Oh, hi. Sorry?
It is prevention that can cure, so I think we invested a lot of time in what we do if we go wrong, try and prevent something from wrong in the first place.
See, you can't prevent everything. And that's the problem with definitely web systems or other systems, is that you get black swan events. You get things that will come together in a certain way that they will fail. So prevention is a good thing to work on, but I wouldn't say it's key. I would say recovery is key. Because if you think that's like an error will happen 1 in 1,000 requests, how many requests do you serve a second? So that error rate is much higher than you think it is. Work-life balance is where the sad carrot comes in as well. I think, though, that having more people on call, more people to spread it out with, more people so that you only take a week on call, say, every 2 months or something, actually helps everybody's work-life balance. I mean, in your current company, you've probably got a team of people on call already. I mean, help them out by expanding the number of people within it. I don't have a particularly good answer other than that you have enough people to make it so that you can give everyone a good enough work-life balance under expectations that it's not happening all the time. Does that help? There were like hands up here. Hi.
Kind of an interesting situation where we're kind of like on our way going forward into the future with newer projects and systems, and we're kind of going, at least trying to go for that kind of like one team manages like one service or maintains it. But we've got this huge kind of legacy of like a large number of systems, and we've got like one team that kind of maintains, or at the moment, it's just, we're kind of moving away from that, but we still kind of got to maintain and support that.
Yeah. Is that...
Yeah, it's just, you've got the problem where it's like, is that everyone knows their kind of like their different fields within that, and I suppose the question would be around how do you around that large number of systems with...
How do you manage like a large legacy system, kind of keeping that one good and with all the knowledge that's needed? Yeah. It is a little bit broad, yeah. I've worked somewhere where they did have a huge legacy system. It happened over time, gradual, and we did go through a phase of splitting it up. That was how we tackled it. We went through a whole, it took like a year to split this system up into services that we could dole out to teams. And that, again, is where you'll have experts in certain areas. You already know who's better at this particular part of the legacy system and who's better at that bit. So if this legacy system is where most of your company's value comes from, I think it's worth going through that process of splitting it up, which is going to be painful. I've been there. It will get worse before it gets better. But after that, you can then manage it like you would with your newer systems. That's it, really. You had one.
You mentioned that ops teams aren't going away.
I don't think so, no.
And then a distinction between infrastructure-related issues of the domain of the ops
Mm-hmm.
team and application issues of the apps
Mm-hmm.
team. I'm guessing that a lot of the time when there is an infrastructure-related issue, it causes an impact to the application and the apps team get an alert. How do you manage the responsibility there, or the responsibility for responding to alerts?
Well, sorry, let me rephrase. So if you have something where you've got an ops team and they're responsible for kind of infrastructure stuff, you have an apps team and they're responsible for the app, but if there's an infra issue, it may manifest itself in the app. So the app team get the issue. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Fantastic. How do we manage that? I would say initially, yeah, the apps team would have to probably investigate that, find out how that's come about, and then call in the help of the on-call person who's in the ops team. Because again, they're expected, well, not all on-call alerts could be automated. You may have to manually pull them in and say, we need some help in this, because there will be an on-call ops person. That's the plan. And then based on that, you would be able to, in your post-mortem follow-up, hopefully figure out what the triggers were, what the signals are at the ops level, so that you could write some kind of automation around that, some kind of alert around that. There will be some kind of tells that you can alert around. So initially, you'll have to get everyone around together, I think, and then try and split it up. Does that help at all?
If you did that, would you still have an alert going to the app team after you put that in?
It depends on what the tells are. Yeah. Depends. Sorry. There were some hands over there somewhere. Yeah.
It's not great construction development team, the ongoing development work that's being carried out as a context switch between working on new work and then having to stop to resolve the issues.
Okay.
How would you suggest how that's managed? Very often people looking from outside that team say, produce much of the sprint. Say, well, actually, I'll fix the green light issues.
Yeah. So if I rephrase that, how do you, tell me if I'm wrong, how do you balance kind of getting, on the context switching of having new feature development with fixing any issues? Because from the outside, it could look like the sprint has been ineffective because you don't have feature work. Okay. This is where whoever is in your sprint needs to be able to be reactive to what comes up. Because as I've been trying to say, these kind of things are a feature of your application. What's the point of those new features if it's down? So you need to kind of have your sprints backlog react to these issues that come up. Because, like I say, there's no point in putting in the brand spanking new buttons if the whole thing doesn't work. So I hope that helps. Was there any more questions? Hey, go ahead.
Do you have any tips on grooming your alerts?
Grooming the alerts.
With alert fatigue, a lot of the time it's because you get a load of bullshit that you don't care about, but actually going through that is really difficult. Do you have some cool tips?
Cool tips on how to groom your alerts, because you can get a lot of bullshit at once, to paraphrase Groom. I try to graph things. Usually you can tell from, like if your alerts are, they're usually from numbers, right? So you can tell from the graphs what the numbers. And then I think I'd probably play around with thresholds a bit. So it's kind of a suck it and see kind of approach, I'm afraid, to figure out what those thresholds are. And I find pictures, for me, personally helps. So if you can graph what's creating it, you can probably find better thresholds to reduce the bullshit, would be my tip. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know what the time is. Yeah, there's 5 minutes, so does anyone want to grill me on anything else? A check shirt.
How would you handle where you've got operations team which can defend against error reports from users, where they basically don't know how to use the application, so actually get that through to developers by taking support, using the support channel, and it would basically read the documentation. All you do will they would say read the documentation and doing your own support and move it to an operations team.
Sorry, let me try and think if I've got that understood. How do you handle kind of support queries?
Support queries where it's more about users being able to resolve.
Do your users have the ability, or whoever they're coming through, to throw alerts to make the pager go off?
Well, we used to have an outpost channel to distract people at their desks.
I'm kind of talking about something slightly different. I think I can have an opinion on that if you'd like, but I'm more about like if your system is falling down rather than the help of the users. For the help of the users, where I've worked, it's always been you kind of rotate. Someone is the helper. Different companies give it different names. The floater, the helper, the supporter. I don't like the floater. And basically, like with the on-call pager, you kind of share it out so you can see, like, there is a dedicated person who basically does, like you said, says read the docs every day. But everyone else can get on with what they need to do. You've probably already thought of that, to be honest. That's not helpful. I guess maybe get some UX guys in, people in, because it sounds like it's not obvious whatever's going on, that they need to ask questions. They need to fix it at source. Sorry about that. Any more? I've already had one from you. Is there any more? Okay, go again.
Have you seen this work in environments where the data in the live environment is sensitive or secret, for example, because development teams don't have access to it?
Well, I would say on that, if it's just the data, then you need to reduce, like with PCI compliance, you need to squash it down until there's a smaller footprint as possible, which is going to require architectural changes probably. But that's where maybe then if you can squash down where that data is to a smaller footprint as possible, you can have a team that looks after that who've been allowed to do it. And again, if they're big enough, you've got the support there. Does that help at all? Because I think everything else, they should have access to their own apps. And sorry, does that help? Squash down the footprint of what needs that security. Last one, I think. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We deal with healthcare data.
Cool.
So people have access to only a limited number of engineers or software devs, because we do have devs on call.
Cool.
We do have them on the rota.
Cool.
Both during office hours and at fairs. And we do have a limited number of people who have with us the permissions and background checks to have access to
Ah,
the
yes,
data.
yes.
And it does become a problem when those people then leave the role somebody else to do that process. So it's great to have that, those people who have that ability to access the data, but then they are then the focus when something goes wrong. You need to get the person that provide access.
So I guess maybe at that point, try and get more people with that. Unfortunately, I think the answer to most of this is more people to bring down the pressure on the small people that only have the access. I mean, also it will help you guys out if you've got a bigger list of people. Then when someone leaves, you've got like 10 more people who've got to sign off. Yeah. Okay. I hope that was good fun. I enjoyed this, and I hope that I've kind of got you to think about taking on some more on-call support to make your apps the best they can be. Thank you very much.